As we witness the processional of the state and territory flags of the United States of America, we also welcome the Commissioners and Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission and the World War II Memorial Advisory Board. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the official party for today's ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States. The colors for today's ceremony are presented by the Joint Armed Forces Color Guard. The national anthem will be sung by musician First Class Tracy J. Thomas of the United States Coast Guard Band. Philip M. Hannan grew up on 17th Street in Washington, D.C. He and his three brothers were all veterans of World War II. He was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division and was involved in 3 campaigns. He is the retired Archbishop for the city of New Orleans.
Let us pray. General Dwight D. Eisenhower spoke to our whole nation when addressing the troops in 1944 with these words: "You are about to embark upon the great crusade. Let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking." Today we commemorate that national crusade with the inception of this memorial. No war in our history so rallied the commitment of all our citizens. The roll call includes every sector of our society: the farmer, the factory worker, the mother, the miner, the engineer, and above all, the brave men and women in the armed forces, on the sea, in the air, and on the ground, all beseeching God to guard and guide us as we fought for the freedom of the human family. May this memorial record forever the prayers, the sweat and tears of every citizen, and the blood of so many millions of those who fulfill the words of Scripture: "Greater love than this no man has, that he lays down his life for his friend." And we include in our remembrance today all the armed forces and peoples of our allies. May we, as legatees of the Great Crusade, be inspired to continue to serve this land we love so much, as expressed by our forefathers in the Declaration of Independence, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. We mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And to that end, we beg our loving God to give us the light to guide us, the courage to support us, and His love to unite us now and forevermore. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Chairman of the American Battle Monuments Commission and host for today's ceremony, General Fred Woerner.
I welcome you to the official groundbreaking ceremony for the National World War II Memorial. There are many here today I want to publicly recognize. First and foremost, Mr. President, we are honored by your presence. You, of course, are no stranger to this project, having stood here with us 5 years ago today to dedicate this sacred ground for the memorial to America's World War II generation. Ambassador Hannan Williams, American Battle Monuments Commissioner and Chairman of the World War II Memorial Committee. Senator Bob Dole, National Chairman of our fundraising campaign. Whose leadership personifies the generation we honor. His national co-chairman, Frederick W. Smith, founder and CEO of FedEx Corporation. Together, their energy and commitment to the campaign brought remarkable results. Ohio Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who launched the effort to authorize the National World War II Memorial in 1987. Members of the President's Cabinet, Secretary of Defense William Cole, Secretary of Health and Human Services Donna Shalala, Secretary of Transportation Rodney Sweeter, Acting Secretary of Veterans Affairs Herschel Gober, and the White House Chief of Staff John Podesta. 2 times Academy Award-winning actor Tom Hanks donated his time and considerable talent to serve as our national spokesman, taking a simple message to the American people: it's time to say thank you. Friedrich St. Florian, design architect of the National World War II Memorial, who has led the creative design effort. Pete Wheeler, Commissioner of Veterans Affairs for the state of Georgia and Chairman of the Memorial Advisory Board. Just Hay, a member of the Memorial Advisory Board and Chairman of the World War II Memorial Finance Committee. Luther Smith, who flew with the famed Tuskegee Airmen and served as a member of our Architect Engineer Evaluation Board. World War II Chaplain and retired Archbishop Philip M. Hannan, who has graced us with his inspirational invocation. Joining the official party on stage are the Commissioners and Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission and the members of the Memorial Advisory Board. We're delighted to welcome First Lady, Senator-elect Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton. And former Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Labor, and President of the American Red Cross, Elizabeth Dole. Members of Congress, without whose bipartisan support this memorial would not be possible, there are 22 World War II veterans still serving. We are honored to have 7 of these vets with us today. Senators Strom Thurmond and John Woerner, and Representatives John Dingell, Benjamin Gilman, Ralph Regula, Bob Stump, and Joe Skeen. We offer a special welcome to former Representative Sonny Montgomery, whose name will forever be linked to veterans' benefits and programs. We are also pleased to acknowledge the presence of the Mayor of the District of Columbia, Anthony Williams, Secretary of the Army, Louis Caldera, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Richard Myers, Chief of Staff of the Army, General Eric Shinseki, Coast Guard Commandant Admiral James Lloyd, and former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral William Crowell and General Colin Powell. The organizations that guided our efforts over the past several years, Chairman J. Carter Brown and the Commissioners of the Commission of Fine Arts, Acting Executive Director Bill Lawson and members of the National Capital Planning Commission, Director Robert Stanton and Associates from the National Park Service, Commissioner Bob Peck and Associates from the General Services Administration, and Leo Daly, whose international firm serves as the project architect engineer. And finally, I am pleased to welcome in our audience Susan Eisenhower, representing her grandfather, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander in World War II. The grandson of Sir Winston Churchill, Winston S. Churchill. World War II Medal of Honor recipient and former governor of South Dakota, Joe Foss. And baseball greats Bob Feller, Warren Spahn, Tommy Henrich, Bert Shepard, and Buck O'Neill, all veterans of the Second World War. I ask that those distinguished guests in the audience please stand to be recognized. Thank you. To the World War II generation, if I had the time, I would name every one of you with us today, for you are the heroes in the eyes of the nation. It is my privilege representing the American Battle Monuments Commission to host this ceremony, groundbreaking for the memorial in your honor. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you from the state of Ohio, U.S. Representative Marcy Kaptur.
Reverend clergy, President Clinton, honored guests all. We, the children of freedom, on this first Veterans Day of the new century, gather to offer highest tribute, long overdue, and our everlasting respect, gratitude, and love to Americans of the 20th century, whose valor and sacrifice yielded the modern triumph of liberty over tyranny. This is a memorial, not to a man, but to a time and a people. This is a long anticipated day. It was 1987 when this memorial was first conceived. As many have said, it has taken longer to build the memorial than fight the war. Today, with the support of Americans from all walks of life, veteran service organizations, and overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress, this memorial becomes a reality. I do not have time to mention all the members of Congress who deserve thanks, but certain members in particular must be recognized. Again, Representative Sonny Montgomery, now retired, a true champion of veterans in the House. Senator Strom Thurmond, our unfailing advocate in the Senate, as well as Representative Bill Clay of Missouri, and two retired members, Representative Henry Gonzalez of Texas and Senator John Glenn of our Buckeye State of Ohio. At the end of World War I, the French poet Guillaume Apollinaire declared himself against forgetting and wrote of his fallen comrades, "You ask neither for glory nor for tears." 5 years ago, at the close of the 50th anniversary ceremonies for World War II, Americans consecrated this ground with soil from the resting places around the world of those who served and died on all fronts. We too declared ourselves against forgetting. We pledged that America would honor and remember their selfless devotion on this mall that commemorates democracy's march. Apollinaire's words resonated again as E.B. Sledge reflected on the moment the Second World War ended. Sitting in a stunned silence, we remembered our dead. So many dead. Except for a few widely scattered shouts of joy, the survivors of the abyss sat hollow-eyed, trying to comprehend a world without war. Yes, individual acts by ordinary men and women in an extraordinary time. One exhausting skirmish, one determined attack, one valiant act of heroism, one dogged determination to give your all, one heroic act after another, by the thousands, by the millions, bound our country together as it has not been since, bound the living to the dead, in common purpose and in service to freedom and to life. As a Marine wrote about his company, "I cannot say too much for the men. I have seen a spirit of brotherhood that goes with one foot here amid the friends we see, and the other foot there amid the friends we see no longer, and one foot is as steady as the other." Today, we break ground. It is only fitting that the event that reshaped the modern world in the 20th century and marked our nation's emergence from isolationism to leader of the free world be commemorated on this site. Our work will not be complete until a light feature from the central sculpture of the World War II memorial falls on the image of the Washington Monument as it casts its shadow in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, as the 18th, 19th, and 20th century struggle for freedom converge at one moment. Here, freedom will shine. She will shine. This memorial honors those still living who served abroad and on the home front, and also those lost. The nearly 300,000 Americans who died in combat, and the millions who survived the war, but who have since passed away. Among that number, I count my inspired constituent, Roger Durbin of Berkey, Ohio, a letter carrier, who fought bravely with the Army's 101st Armored Division in the Battle of the Bulge, and who, because he could not forget, asked me in 1987 why there was no memorial in our nation's capital to which he could bring his grandchildren. Roger is with us spiritually today, and to help us remember him and his contribution to America, we have with us a delegation from his Ohio Buckeye American Legion post, the Joseph Dean Post in Sylvania, Ohio. I know they're here. And his beloved family, his widow Marion, who stood by his side every step of the way. She is here with us today. And his granddaughter Melissa, an art historian and member of the World War II Memorial Advisory Board. I brought with me today the prayer card from Roger's funeral service earlier this year. And when the soil is ultimately dug in this memorial, we're going to put it right in the ground. This is a memorial to historic sacrifice. It is also a memorial for the living, positioned between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial, to remember how freedom charge that is. And yet here today, we pledge that as the World War II Memorial is built, through the simplifying elements of stone and water and life, there will be no charitable oblivion. America will not forget. The world will not forget. When we as a people can no longer remember the complicated individuals who walked in Freedom's March, a husband, a sister, a friend, a brother, an uncle, a father, when those individuals become simplified in histories and in family stories, still, when future generations journey to this holy place, America will not forget. Freedom's children will not forget. It is now indeed my great pleasure to introduce a gentleman and Captain Luther Smith, a member of the famed Tuskegee Airmen, who served on the World War II Memorial Architect Engineer Evaluation Board. It is my great honor to introduce Captain Smith.
Thank you, Congresswoman Marcy, for that warm introduction. Mr. President, Senator Dole, General Woerner, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a thrill to be here this afternoon to be among so many of my fellow World War II veterans. Today's groundbreaking is a long-awaited milestone in the evolution of the National World War II Memorial. For today, we celebrate the approval of Friedrich St. Florian's memorial design after a long and spirited public review process. I had the pleasure, the privilege, to serve as a member of the Architect Engineer Evaluation Board that judged the 403 entries in the National Design Competition. We and the members of the design jury set out to select a design architect whose vision for the memorial matched the scale and significance of the event it commemorates, as well as the classic beauty and nobility of the national landmarks around it that soon will be its neighbors. The elegance and sensitivity of the approved design is proof that we selected the right person for this monumental task. 59 years ago, I was in my early 20s, as were many of you here today, young, eager, and wondering what the future held for me in Des Moines, Iowa. Little did I know that soon I would be flying with a group of men who would become known as the Tuskegee Airmen. What a proud time for a young man in 1940s America to be allowed to fly and fight for his country, to be part of an effort that united this nation in a way we hadn't seen before and we haven't seen since. I flew 133 combat missions in a combination of fighter aircraft, the P-39 Air Cobra, the P-47 Thunderbolt, and the famed P-51 Mustang. It was on my final scheduled mission on Friday, October 13, 1944, that my P-51 Mustang was brought down. We were strafing oil tank cars near Budapest, Hungary, when a ball of fire from a direct strike erupted directly in front of me. I was in and out of the flames in less than a second, but the explosion blew up my cockpit windows, buckled the wing surfaces, and destroyed much of the tail assembly. I was uninjured, but 600 miles from home in a badly damaged aircraft. Flames soon enveloped the engine because my engine coolant system was badly damaged in the explosion. I wanted to roll the aircraft on its back and fall free before opening my parachute. But the plane went into a spin and I fell partially out of the cockpit. As I tried to scramble back into the cockpit, my right foot became wedged between the rudder pedal and the brake, so I couldn't get back in the cockpit or get out. My oxygen mask was blown off and I went unconscious. The next thing I recall is floating down and looking up at a badly torn parachute. Miraculously, I had pulled the ripcord while trapped semi-conscious in the aircraft. The opening parachute pulled me free, saved my life by fracturing my right hip. I was falling too fast at first, connected to the parachute by just one harness strap attached to my fractured hip. I went unconscious again, and when I awoke, I was crashing through the trees. My parachute came to rest at the top of the trees and kept me from smashing into the ground. I was rescued and captured by German soldiers and spent the last 7 months of World War II in German hospitals and in Stalag 18A prisoner of war camp. My injuries required 18 operations and 3 years of hospitalization. But I was lucky. I have lived to tell that story. More than 400,000 Americans never came home to tell their story. And more than 10 million of the 16 million who served in World War II are no longer with us today to tell their story. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to serve my country during her time of need and to have played a small but rewarding role in the effort to establish a memorial to that time. I look forward to the day when I can bring my children and others here to our National Mall to walk among the landmarks of our young democracy, to stroll through one of the great gathering places in this special city, the World War II Memorial Plaza, and share with them our nation's newest symbol of freedom. Members of my generation hold within them thousands of similar stories to the one I've just shared with you today. Stories of events and experiences that unfolded many years ago. The telling of those stories will end all too soon, but the lessons they teach must and will be remembered for generations to come. This World War II memorial will keep those stories and lessons alive forever. Thank you, and God bless America.
1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. Prodigious effort. Never before have we had so little time in which to do so much. These are the times that try men's souls.
In December of 1943, with the final cost of an Allied victory incalculable and the list of those lives to be lost forever not nearly complete, a war correspondent named Ernie Pyle sat in a tent outside of Naples and wrote the following on his typewriter. At the front lines in Italy. In this war, I have known a lot of officers who were loved and respected by the soldiers under them, but never have I crossed the trail of any man as beloved as Captain Henry T. Waskow of Belton, Texas. Captain Waskow was a commanding company commander in the 36th Division. He had been in this company since long before he left the States. He was very young, only in his middle 20s. But he carried in him a sincerity and gentleness that made people want to be guided by him. After my own father, he comes next, the sergeant told me. He always looks after us, the soldier said. He'd go to bat for us every time. I've never known him to do anything unkind, another one said. I was at the foot of the mule trail the night they brought Captain Waskow down. The moon was nearly full at the time, and you could see far up the trail, and even part way across the valley. Soldiers made shadows as they walked. Dead men had been coming down the mountain all evening, lashed onto the backs of mules. They came lying belly down across the wooden pack saddle, the heads hanging down on the left side of the mule, their stiffened legs sticking awkwardly from the other side, bobbing up and down as the mule walked. The Italian mule skinners were afraid to walk beside dead men, so Americans had to lead the mules down that night. Even the Americans were reluctant to unlash and lift off the bodies when they got to the bottom, so an officer had to do it himself and ask others to help. The first one came early in the morning. They slid him down from the mule and stood him on his feet for a moment. In the half-light, he might have been merely a sick man standing there leaning on the other. Then they laid him on the ground in the shadow of the stone wall alongside the road. I don't know who the first one was. You feel small in the presence of dead men and ashamed of being alive, and you don't ask silly questions. We left him there beside the road, that first one, and we all went back into the cow shed and sat on water cans or lay on the straw waiting for the next batch of mules. Somebody said the dead soldier had been dead for 4 days, and then nobody said anything more about him. We talked for an hour or more. The dead man lay all alone outside in the shadow of the wall. Then a soldier came into the cowshed and said there were some more bodies outside. We went out into the road. 4 mules stood there in the moonlight, and the road where the trail came down off the mountain. The soldiers who led them stood there, waiting. "This one is Captain Waskow," one of them said quickly. 2 men unlashed his body from the mule and lifted it off and laid it in the shadow beside the stone wall. Other men took the other bodies off. Finally, there were 5 lying end to end in a long row. You don't cover up dead men in the combat zones. They just lie there in the shadows until somebody else comes after them. The uncertain mules moved off to their olive orchards. The men in the road seemed reluctant to leave. They stood around, and gradually I could sense them moving one by one close to Captain Waskow's body. Not so much to look, I think, as to say something in finality to him and to themselves. I stood close by, and I could hear. One soldier came and looked down, and he said out loud, "God damn it." That's all he said. And then he walked away. Another one came, and he said, "God damn it to hell anyway." He looked down for a few last moments, and then turned and left. Another man came. I think he was an officer. It was hard to tell officers from men in the half-light, for everybody was grimy and dirty. The man looked down into the dead captain's face and then spoke directly to him, as though he were alive. "I'm sorry, old man." Then a soldier came, stood beside the officer, and bent over, and he too spoke to his dead captain, not in a whisper, but awfully tenderly, and he said, "I sure am sorry, sir." Then the first man squatted down, and then reached in and took the captain's hand, and sat there for a full 5 minutes, holding the dead hand in his own, and looking intently into the dead face, and he never uttered a sound all the time he sat there. Finally, put the hand down. He reached up and gently straightened the points of the captain's shirt collar. And then he sort of rearranged the tattered edges of his uniform around the room, and then he got up and walked away down the road in the moonlight. The rest of us went back into the cowshed, leaving the 5 dead men lying in a line end to end in the shadow of the low stone wall. We lay down on the straw in the cowshed, and pretty soon we were all asleep. Henry Pye, Italy, December of 1943.
Please welcome the chairman of the National World War II.
We might just have all the World War II veterans stand up if you can. Thank you for your service.
I want to thank Tom Hanks. He's really been a big help. And I want to say it publicly so everybody will know how much she's meant to this entire effort. Tom, thank you. And a special thanks to my friend, Senator Woerner. There's not much federal money in this project, but there's a little. And I know I knew the right guy to go to. And I enlisted the help of Senator Woerner, and Bob Stump, and Senator Thurman, and others are all over here, Republicans and Democrats. And we thank you. Mr. President, we're honored that you're here today. I'm honored to stand here as representative of more than 16 million men and women who served in World War II. And God bless all of you and the memories of all those who already preceded us in death. It has been said, to be young is to sit under the shade of trees you do not plant. To be mature, plant trees under the shade of which you will not sit. And our generation has gone from the shade to the shadows. And some may ask, why? Now, why now, after 55 years of the peace treaty ending World War II and signed aboard the USS Missouri? There is a very simple answer. Because in another 55 years, there won't be anybody around to bear witness to our part in history's greatest conflict. And for some, inevitably, this memorial will be a place to mourn. For millions of others, it will be a place to learn and to reflect and to draw inspiration for whatever tests confront generations yet unborn. There are many here today who bear battle scars. I can never forget the losses suffered by the greatest generation. But I prefer to dwell on the victories, for ours was more than a war against hated tyrannies that scarred the 20th century with their crimes against humanity. It was, in a very real sense, a crusade for everything that makes life worth living. And over the years, like many of the World War II veterans who just stood, I've attended many reunions. And I've listened to many a war story, even told a few myself. And we just about reached that age now where we can tell about anything, and there's nobody around to contradict it. All the more reason, then, for the war's survivors and its widows and orphans to gather here in democracy's front yard, to place the Second World War within the largest story of America. After today, it belongs where our dwindling ranks will soon belong, to the history books. And some have asked, and some may ask, why this memorial should rise in the majestic company of Washington and Jefferson, Lincoln and Roosevelt. They remind us that the mall is hallowed ground, and so it is. But what makes it hallowed? Is it the monuments that sanctify the vista before us, or is it the democratic faith reflected in those monuments? It is a faith older than America, a love of liberty that each generation must define and sometimes defend in its own way. It was to justify this idea that Washington donned a soldier's uniform and later reluctantly agreed to serve as first president of the nation he conceived. It was to broadcast this idea that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and later as president doubled the size of the United States so that it might become a true empire of liberty. It was to vindicate this idea that Abraham Lincoln came out of Illinois to wage a bloody yet tragically necessary civil war, purging the stain of slavery from freedom's soil. And it was to defend this idea around the world that Franklin Delano Roosevelt led a coalition of conscience against those who would exterminate whole races and put the soul itself in bondage. And today we revere Washington for breathing life into the American experiment, Jefferson for articulating our democratic creed, Lincoln for the high and holy work of abolition, and Roosevelt for upholding popular government at home and abroad. But it isn't only presidents who make history or help realize the promise of democracy. Unfettered by ancient hatreds, America's founders raised a lofty standard, admittedly too high for their generation to attain, yet a continuing source of inspiration to their descendants, for whom America is nothing if not a work in progress. If the overriding struggle of the 19th century was to establish popular government in an era of divine right, the 18th century, if the moral imperative of the 19th century was to abolish slavery, then in the 20th century it fell to millions of citizen soldiers and millions more on the home front, men and women, to preserve a democratic freedoms at a time when murderous dictators threatened their very existence. Their service deserves commemoration here because they wrote an imperishable chapter in the liberation of mankind, even as their nation accepted the responsibilities that came with global leadership. So I repeat, what makes this hallowed ground? Not the marble columns and the bronze statues that frame them all. No, what sanctifies this place is the blood of patriots across 3 centuries, and our own uncompromising insistence that America honor her promises of individual opportunity and universal justice. This is the golden thread that runs throughout the tapestry of our nationhood. The dignity of every life, the possibility of every mind, the divinity of every soul. This is what my generation fought for on distant fields of battle, in the air above, and on remote seas. This is the lesson we have to impart. This is the place to impart it. Learn this, and the trees planted by today's old men, let's say mature men and women, will bear precious fruit. And we may yet break ground on the last war memorial. Thank you all, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary Cohen. Thank you for your service. The other members of the Cabinet Administration, I thank you. General Woerner, thank you for your life. Ambassador Williams, thank you, and all the members of the World War II Memorial Committee. Archbishop Hannan, thank you for your prayers and your leadership in the war. And to Captain Luther Smith of the Tuskegee Airmen, he told you his story, but I can't help noting that in telling you his story, he was rather like a lot of World War II veterans. He left out a few things. He left out the Distinguished Flying Cross, 7 Air Medals, the Purple Heart, and a POW medal. Like many of our soldiers in World War II, his bravery went unmentioned, but we are nonetheless profoundly grateful for it. I'd like to thank Fred Smith, my friend of many years, for stepping up and helping to raise all this money, and also my friend Tom Hanks, who played Captain John Miller in Saving Private Ryan and is now making sure that America never forgets all the Private Ryans. We are grateful for him as well. And I thank Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who recognized the vision of her constituent Roger Durbin and introduced this legislation and has fought for it ever since. I can tell you, as someone who has dealt with it for 8 years, there is no more determined person in the United States Congress. I am only amazed that this memorial was not built in 1988, since she got behind it. Thank you, Marcy Kaptur, for what you did. I thank the members of Congress who are here. Senator Thurman once told me that he was the oldest man who took a glider into Normandy. I don't know what that means 56 years later, but I'm grateful for all of the members of Congress, beginning with Senator Thurman and all the others who are here, who never stopped serving their country. Most of all, I want to say a thank you to Bob Dole and to Elizabeth for their service to America. As my tenure as president draws to a close, I have had, as you might imagine, an up and down relationship with Senator Dole. But I liked even the bad days. I always admired him. I was always profoundly grateful for his courage and heroism in war and 50 years of service in peace. After a rich and long life, he could well have done something else with his time in these last few years, but he has passionately worked for this day, and I am profoundly grateful. I also want to thank the men and women and boys and girls all across our country who participated in this fundraising drive, taking this memorial from dream to reality. Their stories are eloquent testimony to its meaning. Senator Dole and I were sitting up here watching the program unfold today. He told me an amazing story. He said, you know, one day a man from Easton, Pennsylvania called our office. He was a 73-year-old Armenian American named Sarkis Akopius. And he said, you know, I'd like to make a contribution to this memorial. Where do I mail my check? Just call. So he was given the address, and shortly after, this man who was grateful for the opportunities America had given him, the check arrived in the office, a check for $1 million. But there were all the other checks as well, amounting to over $140 million in private contributions. There were contributions from those still too young to serve, indeed far too young to remember the war. More than 1,100 schools across our nation have raised money for the memorial by collecting cans, holding bake sales, putting on dances. Let me just tell you about one of them, Milwaukee High School in Milwaukee, Oregon. 5 years ago, a teacher named Ken Buckles wanted to pay tribute to the World War II veterans. He and his students searched out local veterans and invited them to school for a Living History Day. Earlier this week, Living History Day 2000 honored more than 3,000 veterans with a recreated USO show that filled the pro basketball arena. Last year's event raised $10,000 for the memorial, and students think that this year they'll raise even more. Now, what makes those kids fundraise and organize and practice for weeks on end? Many have grandparents and other relatives who fought in the war. But there must be more to it than that. They learn from their families and teachers that the good life they enjoy as Americans was made possible by the sacrifices of others more than half a century ago. And maybe most important, they want us to know something positive about their own generation as well, and their desire to stand for something greater than themselves. They didn't have the money to fly out here today, but let's all of us send a loud thank you to the kids at Milwaukee High School and their teacher, Ken Buckles, and all the other young people who have supported this cause. The ground we break today is not only a timeless tribute to the bravery and honor of one generation, but a challenge to every generation that follows. This memorial is built not only for the children whose grandparents served in the war, but for the children who will visit this place a century from now, asking questions about America's great victory for freedom. With this memorial, we secure the memory of 16 million Americans, men and women who took up arms in the greatest struggle humanity has ever known. We hallow the ground for more than 400,000 who never came home. We acknowledge a debt that can never be repaid. We acknowledge as well the men and women and children of the home front who tended the factories and nourished the faith that made victory possible. Remember those who fought faithfully and bravely for freedom, even as their own full humanity was under assault. African Americans who had to fight for the right to fight for our country. Japanese Americans who served bravely under a cloud of unjust suspicion. Native American code talkers who helped to win the war in the Pacific. Women who took on new roles in the military and at home. Remember how, in the heat of battle and the necessity of the moment, all of these folks moved closer to being simply Americans. And we remember how after World War II, those who won the war on foreign battlefields dug deep and gave even more to win the peace here at home, to give us a new era of prosperity, to lay the foundation for a new global society and economy, by turning old adversaries into new allies, by launching a movement for social justice that still lifts millions of Americans into dignity and opportunity. I would like to say once more before I go to the veterans here today what I said in Normandy in 1994. Because of you, my generation and those who have followed live in a time of unequal peace and prosperity. We are the children of your sacrifice, and we thank you forever. But now, as then, progress is not inevitable. It requires eternal vigilance and sacrifice. Earlier today, at the Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, we paid tribute to the fallen heroes of the United States ship Cole, 3 of whom have recently been buried at Arlington. The captain of the ship and 20 of the crew members were there today. We honor them. Next week, I will go to Vietnam to honor the men and women America lost there, to stand with those still seeking a full accounting of the missing. But at the same time, I want to give support to Vietnamese and Americans who are working together to build a better future. In Vietnam, under the leadership of former Congressman and former Vietnam POW, Pete Peterson, who has reminded us that we can do nothing about the past, but we can always change the future. That's what all of you did after the war, with Germans, Italians, and Japanese. You built the world we love and enjoy today. The wisdom this monument will give us is to learn from the past and look to the future. May the light of freedom that will stand at the center of this memorial inspire every person who sees it to keep the flame of freedom forever burning in the eyes of our children, and to keep the memory of the greatest generation warm in the hearts of every new generation of Americans. Thank you, and God bless America.
Air Force Orchestra. And it was the thrill of my life when I was invited, well, I should actually say enlisted by Major Glenn Miller to sing with that band. As a matter of fact, I did so many shows in so many strange places that they decided it would be safer for me if they issued me.
Please. Real.
All right. That worked.
Down in front, please.
During World War II, over 400,000 men and women gave their lives in the defense of freedom. Please rise as we remember them today. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats as we...
For his species. The American bald eagle is the symbol of our nation. It reflects the beauty of our land, the strength of our nation, and its majestic grace lets us never forget that our country will always be free.
Let us swear allegiance to a land that's free.
for the World War II Memorial. Today, almost 300 of them, representing 19 states and the District of Columbia, have participated. Let's have a round of applause for our nation's future. And now, on this Veterans Day, we salute all those who have served our nation. Please stand when your service song is played.
And I Coast Guard, we honor you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Air Force.
Long into the wild blue yonder, fly behind into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. And boys, give it a gun, give it a gun. Down we dive, spelling a flame from under. Off with one, hell of a roar. Live, on, hey, nothing to stop the USAF force.
The United States Navy.
Anchors aweigh, my boys, anchors aweigh. Farewell to foreign shores, we sail at break of day, of day. Through our last night or shore, dream to the foe, until we meet again in this new happy voyage home.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Marines.
To the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battle in the air and land and sea. Us to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to play the part of United States Marines.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Out, out, the day has gone as strong. Wherever we go, you will always know that the army is rolling along.
Please remain in place for the departure of the official party.